r/malicious compliance stepdaughter said I can't stop her gaming, so I unplugged everything. You're not my real dad and you can't make me stop gaming. Those words hit me like a slap across the face as I stood in the doorway of Emma's room at 1:47 a.m. on a Tuesday night. Her back was to me, headset on, completely absorbed in some battle royale game while her homework sat untouched on her desk. Again. Emma, we talked about this. You have a chemistry test tomorrow and you haven't even. I said you can't make me. She spun around in her gaming chair, eyes blazing with teenage fury. You're just some guy my mom married. You don't get to tell me what to do. I felt my jaw clench. 3 years. 3 years I've been trying to build a relationship with this kid, and this is what I get. My wife Sarah was already asleep, conveniently avoiding another confrontation about her daughter's gaming addiction that was destroying her junior year. Fine, I said quietly. We'll see about that. Emma had already turned back to her screen, dismissing me like I was nothing. The familiar sounds of gunfire and her teammates shouting through Discord filled the room. Just like every other night for the past 6 months. It wasn't always like this. When I first married Sarah, Emma was actually pretty cool. We'd watch movies together, she'd help me fix things around the house, and yeah, she gamed, but it was reasonable. Maybe 2 hours after homework. Maybe longer on weekends. Normal teenage stuff. But something shifted when she started sophomore year. The gaming went from a hobby to an obsession. School nights became all-nighters. Her grades dropped from B's and A's to D's and F's. She stopped showering regularly. Stopped eating meals with us. Her entire world shrank down to that glowing monitor and whatever virtual battlefield she was conquering. And every time I tried to step in, Sarah would make excuses. She's just going through a phase. You don't understand how hard high school is now. Maybe if you weren't so controlling. Controlling? I was asking for basic human decency. Homework before games. Sleep on school nights. Showing up to family dinner once in a while. Apparently, that made me the villain. The worst part? I genuinely cared about Emma. I'd been in her life since she was 13. I'd driven her to soccer practice before she quit. Helped her study for her permit test. Celebrated when she made honor roll freshman year. Somewhere along the way, I'd started thinking of her as my kid too. But according to her, I was just some guy. I stood there in the hallway outside her room, listening to her laugh with her online friends while her real life crumbled around her. Sarah's gentle snoring drifted from our bedroom. The house felt like it was splitting in two, the part where normal people lived and slept and went to work, and Emma's cave where time didn't exist and responsibilities were just annoying interruptions to her gaming sessions. Tomorrow was Wednesday. Parent-teacher conferences were next week, and I already knew what we'd hear. Emma was failing 3 classes. She'd missed 12 assignments in AP English alone. Her chemistry teacher had stopped calling on her because she just put her head down and slept. But sure, I was the problem for wanting her to have a future. I walked to the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee, even though it was almost 2 a.m. Sleep wasn't happening anyway. Emma's words kept echoing in my head, you can't make me. Challenge accepted. I sat at the kitchen table until 3:30 a.m., watching the glow from Emma's room finally go dark. Part of me had hoped she'd come down, maybe apologize, or at least acknowledge that staying up until dawn on a school night was insane. But no. She just gamed until she literally couldn't keep her eyes open anymore. The coffee had gone cold in my hands as I formulated a plan. Emma wanted to test me. Fine. But I wasn't going in half-cocked. If I was going to do this, I needed to be smart about it. The next morning was predictably awful. Emma stumbled downstairs at 7:45, 15 minutes before she had to leave for school, looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Her hair was greasy, mascara smudged under her eyes, wearing the same clothes she'd had on yesterday. Morning, I said neutrally, not looking up from my tablet where I was researching circuit breakers and Wi-Fi router controls. She grunted something that might have been English and grabbed an energy drink from the fridge. Breakfast of champions. Sarah came down looking frazzled, already running late for her nursing shift. Emma, honey, you look tired. Did you get enough sleep? I'm fine, Mom. Emma's voice had that flat, dead quality it got when she was running on fumes. She was up gaming until 3:30, I said calmly, still scrolling through articles about parental control software. Sarah shot me a warning look. David, not this morning, okay? We're all running late. Right. God forbid we address the fact that your daughter is literally destroying her health and her future. Dad. Emma slammed her energy drink on the counter. I told you last night. You told me I can't make you stop gaming. I heard you loud and clear. The way her face twisted with satisfaction made my stomach turn. She thought she'd won. She thought throwing our relationship in my face had shut me down. That's right. So maybe just, don't. Sarah looked between us like she was watching a tennis match, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. Can we please just? Emma, try to get some sleep tonight, okay? David, we'll talk about this later. Later. It was always later with Sarah. Later never came. Emma grabbed her backpack and headed for the door, but something made her pause. Maybe it was the way I was sitting there, completely calm, making notes on my tablet. She turned back with a frown. What are you doing? Research, I said simply. For what? I looked up and smiled. Not a mean smile, not angry. Just, pleasant. You'll see. For the first time in months, Emma looked uncertain. Good. She should be. After they both left, I spent the morning making phone calls. First to my buddy Jake, who's an electrician, asking about the technical aspects of my plan. Then to the internet provider to update our security settings. Then to a locksmith, just in case. The beautiful thing about being the homeowner and the one who pays all the bills. I had every right to control my own internet, my own electricity, my own house. Emma had drawn a line in the sand. She'd made it clear that I had no authority over her, no say in her choices, no role in her life except to provide the roof over her head and the utilities that powered her addiction. Well, if I was just the guy who paid the bills, then maybe it was time I started acting like it. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Please don't do anything dramatic while I'm at work. Too late for that, Sarah. Your daughter made sure of it. The day dragged on like torture. I tried to focus on work, but every few minutes I'd catch myself staring at my phone, waiting for the inevitable call from Emma's school. It came at 1:23 p.m. Mr. Henderson. This is Principal Martinez at Riverside High. Emma fell asleep in her chemistry class again, and when Mrs. Peterson tried to wake her up, she was, unresponsive isn't the right word, but very disoriented. We're concerned about her well-being. My chest tightened. Is she okay? Does she need medical attention? She's awake now, but she's in my office. Honestly, she looks terrible. Dark circles, seems confused about what day it is. Has she been getting adequate sleep at home? The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, being questioned about Emma's welfare by her school, while my wife accused me of being too controlling for trying to address the exact same issues. No, sir, she hasn't. She's been staying up all night gaming despite our attempts to set boundaries. My wife and I are working on solutions. I see. Well, we can't have students sleeping through their classes. If this continues, we'll have to consider more serious interventions. Emma's a bright girl, but her grades have become quite concerning. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the work parking lot, head in my hands. This wasn't just about disrespect anymore. Emma was literally making herself sick, and Sarah was enabling it by refusing to back me up on any consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. School called you, didn't they? Stop trying to get me in trouble. The audacity was breathtaking. I was getting her in trouble. Not the fact that she'd stayed up until 3:30 a.m. gaming. I typed back, you got yourself in trouble. Actions have consequences. Whatever. You can't do anything anyway. There it was again. That phrase that had been eating at me since last night. She was so confident, so sure that she'd found the magic words to neutralize me completely. I drove home early, telling my boss I had a family emergency. Technically true. The house was quiet when I walked in. Emma wouldn't be back from school for another hour. I stood in the hallway between the living room and the staircase, looking around at what was supposed to be our home. Family photos on the walls showing happier times. Emma's honor roll certificate from freshman year still hanging in the hallway. The couch where we used to watch Marvel movies together. When had it all gone so wrong? I climbed the stairs and stood outside Emma's room. Even with her at school, I could smell the stale air, old food, unwashed laundry, that particular funk of someone who spends too much time in an unventilated space. Her gaming setup dominated the room like a shrine. 3 monitors, LED lights, a chair that probably cost more than most people's rent. All of it powered by my electricity, connected through my internet. My phone rang. Sarah. The school called me too, she said without preamble. Principal Martinez is concerned about Emma. As he should be. As we should be. As I've been trying to tell you for months. I know. Look, maybe we need to have a serious talk with her when I get home tonight. A talk. Sarah, we've had dozens of talks. She told me last night that I can't make her stop gaming because I'm not her real dad. What exactly do you think another conversation is going to accomplish? Silence on the other end. Then, she said that. Those exact words. While staring me in the face at 2 a.m. on a school night. David, I'm sorry. I didn't know she'd said that. Because you were asleep. Like always when these confrontations happen. Another pause. What do you want me to say? I work 12-hour shifts, I can't stay up all night policing her gaming. Then maybe it's time for a different approach. Something in my tone must have worried her. David, what are you planning? You sound different. I looked around Emma's room one more time. The gaming paradise that had become her prison. I'm planning to solve our problem. What does that mean? It means Emma's about to learn what you can't make me actually costs. The conversation with Sarah left me standing in Emma's doorway, phone still warm in my hand. She'd hung up after making me promise not to do anything irreversible before she got home. Irreversible. As if watching Emma's life spiral into complete dysfunction was somehow reversible. I had 3 hours before Emma got back from school. 3 hours to set everything up. First stop, the basement. Our house's electrical panel was tucked away behind the water heater, a gray metal box that most people never think about until the power goes out. I'd lived here long enough to know which breaker controlled Emma's room, second row, fourth switch from the left. I discovered it 2 years ago when she'd overloaded the circuit trying to run her gaming setup, a space heater, and a mini fridge all at once. I flipped it off and listened. The low hum of electronics from upstairs went silent. Perfect. But the power was just step 1. Emma was resourceful when she wanted to be, she'd probably just move her laptop downstairs and try to game in the living room. That's where the Wi-Fi came in. I pulled up the router settings on my phone and navigated to the parental controls section. Funny how I'd set this up when we first moved in together, thinking I might need it someday. Sarah had laughed at me then. She's not even 13 yet, David. You're overthinking this. If only past David could see us now. I created a new network profile, Emma_restricted. Bandwidth, 0.5 megabits per second, allowed sites, homework portals, Khan Academy, educational resources only. Gaming platforms, streaming services, social media, all blocked. Then I removed her devices from the main network entirely. My phone buzzed. A text from my buddy Jake. Hey man, got those timer switches you wanted. Want me to drop them by? Actually, just learned something interesting about my breaker box. Think I'm all set, but thanks. Everything okay? You sounded pretty stressed when you called. Jake knew me well enough to read between the lines. We'd been friends since college, and he'd watched me navigate the stepfather thing from day one. He'd also seen how much Emma's situation had been weighing on me lately. Just some teenage drama. Nothing I can't handle. Famous last words, brother. Call if you need backup. I spent the next hour researching local internet cafes and gaming lounges, making note of their locations and hours. If Emma was as addicted as I suspected, she'd try to find alternative places to game. I wanted to be ready. At 2:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Henderson. This is Ms. Garcia from the attendance office at Riverside High. Emma signed out early today, said she had a dentist appointment. My blood went cold. We don't have any dentist appointment scheduled. Oh. Oh. I'm so sorry, she had a note and everything looked legitimate. What time did she leave? About 20 minutes ago. Mr. Henderson, I'm really sorry about the confusion. Should I? It's fine. Thank you for calling. It wasn't fine. Emma had figured out I was planning something and decided to get ahead of it. She was probably on her way home right now, ready for whatever confrontation awaited her. I quickly finished the router configuration and headed back upstairs. If she wanted to escalate this, fine. But she was about to learn that being 16 doesn't make you as clever as you think you are. The sound of her key in the front door reached me just as I was closing her bedroom door. She was early, but I was ready. I'm home, she called out, but there was something different in her voice. Less casual than usual. More alert. She bounded up the stairs, and I heard her door slam shut. Then, after about 30 seconds, what the hell? Showtime. I walked slowly down the hall and knocked on her door. Everything okay in there? My computer won't turn on. Huh. That's weird. The door flew open. Emma stood there, face flushed, hair disheveled from her rush home. Did you do something to my room? Why would I do something to your room? Because you're being weird and creepy about my gaming. I maintained perfect calm. Emma, you made it very clear last night that I can't make you stop gaming. I heard you. So what did you do? Nothing to your gaming. I wouldn't dream of it. Her eyes narrowed as she processed my words. I could practically see the gears turning in her head, trying to figure out what I'd actually done versus what I was admitting to. Then why won't my setup work? Have you checked if there might be an electrical issue? Old houses sometimes have problems with circuits. Emma's face went through several expressions, confusion, suspicion, then dawning realization. She pushed past me and stomped downstairs toward the basement. I followed at a leisurely pace, genuinely curious to see how this would play out. The breakers OFF, she shouted from below. Oh no. That's terrible. You should flip it back on. I heard the switch click. Then her footsteps pounding back up the stairs, taking them two at a time. Her bedroom door slammed again, followed by the familiar startup sounds of her gaming rig coming back to life. Victory lasted about 90 seconds. David. The fury in her voice echoed through the entire house. What did you do to the internet? I knocked on her door again. Is there a problem with the Wi-Fi? She yanked it open, laptop in hand, showing me a screen full of error messages. It says I don't have permission to access these sites. It says contact your network administrator. Wow, that sounds like a technical issue. Maybe try restarting your router. Don't play dumb with me. You did this. I pulled out my phone and opened a random gaming site. It loaded perfectly. Weird, mine works fine. Maybe it's just your devices. The look she gave me could have melted steel. This is bullshit. You can't just cut off my internet. Emma, I would never cut off your internet. You have internet. I gestured to her laptop where educational sites were loading just fine. See? Khan Academy works perfectly. That's not the same thing. I thought you said I couldn't make you stop gaming. I'm not making you stop anything. I'm just managing my household resources efficiently. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her recalibrating. This wasn't the same pushover stepfather she dismissed last night. This version was calm, reasonable, and completely immovable. You're being psychotic. I'm being practical. Gaming clearly isn't working out for you academically, so I've prioritized your internet access for educational content. Seems pretty responsible of me, actually. Mother will hear about this. I'm sure she will. In fact, she should be home in about 4 hours. Plenty of time for you to work on that chemistry homework you ignored last night. Emma's face cycled through rage, disbelief, and something that might have been panic. The reality was setting in, she was home, it was barely 3 p.m., and she had absolutely nothing to do except face the homework she'd been avoiding. I'll use my phone data. That's certainly your choice. Though I imagine your data plan isn't really designed for hours of gaming. Might get expensive. She was already pulling out her phone, fingers flying over the screen. I watched her face fall as she realized the mobile gaming experience wasn't quite the same as her 3-monitor setup with high-speed internet. I'll go to Jake's house. Jake was her gaming buddy who lived across town. Okay. How are you planning to get there? Another pause. Emma didn't have a car yet, and her usual rides were Sarah or me. I'll walk. It's 12 miles to Jake's house, but sure. Exercise is healthy. The desperation was starting to show now. She kept glancing back at her dark monitors like they might spontaneously come back to life. This is insane. You're being insane. Emma, you told me I couldn't make you stop gaming. I listened. I'm not stopping you from anything. But I'm also not obligated to provide premium gaming infrastructure for someone who thinks I'm just some guy their mom married. That hit home. Her face flushed deeper. I'll tell everyone at school what a freak you are. You mean you'll tell everyone that your stepfather turned off the premium internet because you were failing classes? I'm not sure that makes me look like the bad guy here. For the first time since this whole mess started, Emma looked genuinely unsure of herself. The standoff in her doorway stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds. Emma's eyes darted between me, her useless gaming setup, and her phone screen showing her rapidly depleting data allowance. Fine, she said finally, voice dripping with venom. I'll just do something else then. She slammed the door in my face, and I heard the lock click. Victory felt hollow. This was just round 1, and I knew Emma well enough to realize she wasn't going to accept defeat quietly. For about 20 minutes, the house was blissfully quiet. I made myself a sandwich and tried to focus on some work emails, but I kept glancing at the ceiling, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Emma wasn't the type to just sit in her room and contemplate her life choices. The first sign of trouble was music. Loud, bass-heavy music that made the windows vibrate. I climbed the stairs and knocked on her door. "Emma, turn it down please." The volume increased. I tried the handle, still locked. "Emma, I'm serious. Turn down the music." Now she was adding singing. Terrible, deliberately off-key singing at the top of her lungs. I went back to the basement and flipped the breaker for her room again. The music cut off abruptly, followed by a shriek of pure rage that probably scared the neighbors. "That's harassment," she screamed through the door. "That's noise management," I called back. "When you're ready to use your indoor voice, you can have power back." What followed was 20 minutes of the most creative cursing I'd ever heard from a 16-year-old. Some of the combinations were actually impressive. When that didn't work, she started kicking the walls rhythmically, thud, 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 like a prisoner trying to drive the guards insane. My phone rang. "Sarah." "David, what's happening?" "Emma just sent me about 50 text messages saying you've lost your mind. I implemented some new house rules around gaming and internet usage." "What kind of rules?" I explained the power situation and the Wi-Fi restrictions. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Sarah, you turned off her electricity." "I turned off electricity to someone who told me I have no authority over her." Seemed like the logical response. "David, this is..." Another pause. "This is really extreme." The kicking upstairs got louder, and now Emma was shouting my name interspersed with colorful descriptions of my character and intelligence. "You know what's extreme, Sarah? Watching your daughter destroy her future while you make excuses for her." Emma fell asleep in class again today. The principal called both of us. "She's failing 3 subjects, but sure, let's worry about whether my response is too extreme. I just think maybe we should have discussed. We've been discussing this for months. Every time I try to set boundaries, you undermine me. Every time I suggest consequences, you say I'm being too harsh. Well, now your daughter has made it clear that I'm not her parent and have no say in her choices. So I'm responding as the homeowner and bill payer instead." The line went quiet except for Emma's continued tantrum echoing through the house. "How long are you planning to keep this up?" Sarah asked finally. "Until she's ready to have a real conversation about boundaries and respect. Or until you decide to actually parent your daughter instead of being her friend. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Sarah. It's not fair that I care more about Emma's grades than she does. It's not fair that I'm the only one in this house trying to prepare her for real life. And it's definitely not fair that she gets to treat me like garbage while I pay for the privilege." A new sound joined Emma's percussion concert, something being thrown against the wall. "Hard. I have to go," I said. "Your daughter is destroying her room now." "David, please don't." I hung up and took the stairs 2 at a time. The throwing sounds were getting more frequent and aggressive. "Emma. Stop throwing things or you'll lose more privileges." "What privileges?" she screamed back. "You already took everything. Trust me, I can take a lot more." The throwing stopped. In the sudden quiet, I could hear her breathing heavily on the other side of the door. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Calculated. "You know what? Fine. You want to play games? I can play games too." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. This wasn't teenage rage anymore, this was planning mode. And Emma in planning mode had always been formidable. What's that supposed to mean? But she'd gone silent again. No more kicking, no more throwing, no more screaming. Just nothing. Somehow, the silence was infinitely more terrifying than the tantrum had been. The silence from Emma's room lasted exactly 47 minutes. I know because I spent that entire time sitting at the kitchen table, checking my watch every few minutes and wondering what she was plotting. Emma quiet was Emma dangerous. I'd learned that lesson during the great homework strike of freshman year. When my phone started buzzing, I knew the silence had been strategic. The first call was from my mother-in-law. "David, honey, Emma just called me crying. She says you've been abusing her." My blood pressure spiked. "Diane, I turned off her gaming setup because..." "She says you're starving her and keeping her locked in her room without electricity." "That sounds pretty serious." "She's not locked in anywhere, and there's plenty of food downstairs." She's being dramatic because I set some boundaries around her gaming addiction. But even as I said it, I could hear how it might sound to someone getting Emma's version of events. Smart kid. She knew exactly which buttons to push. "Maybe you and Sarah need some counseling," Diane continued. "This doesn't sound like a healthy environment for Emma." 20 minutes later, my own mother called. Then Sarah's sister. Then, and this one really stung, my buddy Jake. "Hey man, I just got a weird call from some kid claiming to be your stepdaughter. She found my number in your phone somehow and wanted me to know you were having some kind of breakdown." Jesus Christ. I rubbed my temples. "Jake, she's manipulating the situation because I took away her gaming privileges." "Look, I don't know the whole story, but she sounded pretty upset. Said you cut the power to her room and she's scared of what you might do next." Scared. Emma had never been scared of anything in her life, least of all me. But she knew that word would get people's attention. "She's playing you, Jake. All of you." But doubt was creeping in. Was I being too extreme? The rational part of my brain knew that cutting power was a pretty nuclear option. But every other approach had failed, and Emma had made it clear she didn't consider me a real authority figure. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Henderson, this is Emma's friend Madison. She's really scared and doesn't know what to do. Can you please just give her the Wi-Fi back?" Then another, "This is Tyler from Emma's chemistry class. She texted me about what's happening. This seems really harsh for just gaming." The kid had mobilized her entire social network. I had to admire the tactical brilliance even as it made me want to throw my phone through the window. Around 6:30, I heard Emma's door open for the first time since our confrontation. Footsteps in the hallway, then she appeared at the top of the stairs. She changed tactics completely. Gone was the furious teenager. Now she looked small, vulnerable, with red-rimmed eyes that suggested she'd been crying. David? Her voice was quiet, shaky. Can we talk? Every parental instinct I developed over 3 years screamed at me to rush up there and fix whatever was wrong. But I forced myself to stay seated. Of course. Come down to the kitchen. She descended slowly, each step carefully calculated to maximize the impression of a broken, defeated child. When she reached the bottom, she wrapped her arms around herself like she was cold. I'm sorry, she whispered. I said some really mean things last night. Here it was, the performance I'd been expecting. Emma was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. When the nuclear option didn't work, she'd switched to emotional manipulation. I appreciate that, I said carefully. I know I've been gaming too much. And my grades are bad. I don't want to fail junior year. She was hitting every note perfectly. Contrition, acknowledgement of the problem, concern for her future. If I hadn't watched her orchestrate the phone campaign for the past 2 hours, I might have believed her. That sounds like real progress, Emma. So maybe we could work out some kind of compromise. Like, I could do homework first, and then have some gaming time. With like, a reasonable bedtime. The reasonable approach. The mature solution. Everything I'd been asking for originally. Everything she'd refused to consider until her nuclear option failed. That sounds very reasonable, I said. Let's talk specifics. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw something that made my stomach clench. Emma wasn't defeated. She wasn't sorry. She was buying time, regrouping for the next assault. This war was far from over. I should have trusted my instincts about Emma's sudden transformation into a reasonable teenager. The negotiation that followed was a masterclass in manipulation that I didn't fully recognize until it was too late. Okay, Emma said, settling into the kitchen chair across from me with perfect posture and attentive eyes. What if we set up a schedule? Like, I get home at 3:15, homework until 6, dinner with the family, then gaming until maybe 10 p.m. on school nights. It was everything I'd been asking for. Reasonable hours, family time, homework priority. She even threw in the family dinner angle, which she knew I'd been pushing for months. That sounds like a good framework, I said, still wary. What about weekends? Maybe later on weekends. Like midnight. But still with homework done first if I have any. Perfect. Too perfect. But I found myself nodding along because this was the Emma I remembered from 2 years ago. The kid who used to help me make pancakes on Sunday mornings and actually seemed to enjoy our movie nights. All right. We can try this system for 2 weeks and see how it goes. Emma's face lit up with what looked like genuine relief. Really? You'll turn my power back on. If you can show me your chemistry homework is done first. Deal. She practically bounced out of her chair. I'll go do it right now. Thank you so much, David. I know I've been really difficult lately. She actually hugged me before rushing upstairs. For a moment, standing there in my kitchen, I felt like maybe we'd turned a corner. Maybe the shock of losing her gaming setup had been exactly the wake-up call she needed. I flipped her breaker back on and reset her Wi-Fi access to normal, telling myself that trust had to start somewhere. The first red flag should have been how quickly she completed that chemistry homework. Emma appeared back in the kitchen 45 minutes later with a full worksheet, every answer neatly filled in. All done, she announced proudly. I glanced over the work. It looked legitimate, correct formulas, proper calculations. This is great, Em. I'm proud of you for focusing. Can I have some gaming time now? I know it's not 6 yet, but I finished early. Against my better judgment, I nodded. She'd held up her end of the bargain. The next red flag was the phone call I got at work the following morning. Mr. Henderson. This is Mrs. Peterson, Emma's chemistry teacher. I wanted to follow up on yesterday's homework assignment. My heart sank. Was there a problem with it? Well, Emma did turn it in, which was a pleasant surprise given her recent track record. However, the work was identical to Jake Morrison's assignment. Word for word, including a very specific calculation error that Jake made. Of course. Emma hadn't done her homework, she'd copied Jake's answers during their text conversation while I'd been fielding calls from concerned relatives. I see. What's the consequence for that? Both students received zeros for the assignment, and I'll be calling home about academic dishonesty. I wanted to give you a heads up since Emma mentioned you've been working with her on time management. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the work parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel. Emma had played me completely. The tears, the reasonable negotiations, the apparent breakthrough, all of it had been theater designed to get her gaming access back. But the real gut punch came in a text message 20 minutes later. Emma, by the way, found a way around your Wi-Fi restrictions yesterday. Faced with tears of joy. VPN apps are amazing. But thanks for turning everything back on. Makes it way easier. She'd never lost internet access at all. While I'd been patting myself on the back for my technical solution, she'd been gaming normally and laughing at my ignorance. The whole crying, apologetic routine had just been her way of getting the power back on for comfort. My phone buzzed again. Emma, oh, and Mom's mad at you for traumatizing me yesterday. Might want to work on your anger management issues. Thumbs up. I stared at that message for a long time, something cold and hard settling in my chest. This wasn't just teenage rebellion anymore. Emma had declared war, and she was winning every battle through lies, manipulation, and my own desire to believe she could change. The gloves were officially off. That night, I didn't confront Emma immediately. Instead, I sat in my home office, door closed, researching my options with the methodical focus I usually reserved for work projects. If Emma wanted to play chess, fine. But she'd picked the wrong opponent. First, I screenshotted her texts about the VPN and academic dishonesty. Then I called Mrs. Peterson back. I want to set up a meeting with you, Emma, and the guidance counselor, I said. Emma has something she needs to confess about yesterday's homework, and I think we need to discuss her overall academic trajectory. Of course. How does tomorrow after school work? Perfect. And Mrs. Peterson? Emma may try to claim I'm being unreasonable or abusive. For context, she's been manipulating the situation at home and has admitted to deliberately circumventing consequences. When Sarah got home, she was loaded for bear. Emma had clearly spent the afternoon laying groundwork. David, we need to talk. Her nursing scrubs were wrinkled, her face exhausted, but her voice carried a edge I rarely heard. Emma told me what really happened yesterday. Did she mention the part where she lied about doing homework and bragged about bypassing my internet restrictions? Sarah paused. What are you talking about? I showed her Emma's texts. Watched her face cycle through confusion, disappointment, and something that might have been embarrassment. She told me you had some kind of breakdown. That you were screaming at her and acting erratic. When have you ever known me to scream at anyone? Sarah sank into the kitchen chair Emma had occupied during her performance the night before. She seemed so upset. So scared. She's a skilled liar, Sarah. And she's getting better at it. From upstairs came the familiar sounds of Emma's gaming setup running at full volume. Laughing with friends, completely unburdened by consequences or guilt. So what now? Sarah asked quietly. Now we stop letting a 16-year-old manipulate us into enabling her own destruction. What does that mean, specifically? I pulled out my laptop and opened a document I've been working on all afternoon. It means Emma gets to make some choices. Real choices with real consequences. Sarah leaned over to read what I'd written, and her face went pale. David, this is really intense. Emma wants to act like an adult who doesn't need parental guidance. Fine. She can start paying for her own phone, her own internet access, her own electricity usage. She wants to treat me like just some guy her mom married. Great. Just some guy isn't obligated to provide luxury gaming setups for people who lie to his face. You're talking about making her get a job. I'm talking about natural consequences. Emma thinks rules don't apply to her because we keep rescuing her from the fallout. What happens when she fails junior year? When she can't get into college? When she's 25 and still living in our basement gaming 18 hours a day? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, listening to Emma's triumphant shouts echoing through the ceiling. She'll never agree to this. She doesn't have to agree. She just has to choose. Follow basic household rules and keep her privileges, or finance her own lifestyle. And if she chooses to keep fighting us? I looked at the document again, phone cancellation, internet restriction to basic homework needs only, electricity limited to lights and outlets for school supplies. Everything else Emma would need to figure out herself. Then she'll learn that being 16 doesn't make her as independent as she thinks she is. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma, ordering pizza for me and my gaming friends. Put it on the credit card you gave me. Thanks. Sarah saw it too. She's ordering food without asking. She's testing boundaries. Again. I typed back, credit card cancelled. If you want pizza, you can pay for it yourself. Emma's response was immediate, WTF. You can't just cancel my card. Watch me. The gaming sounds upstairs stopped abruptly. The silence that followed my credit card text was different from Emma's previous strategic retreats. This wasn't planning mode, this was pure, undiluted rage. I could practically feel the house vibrating with it. David. The scream from upstairs could have shattered glass. Get up here right now. Sarah winced. Maybe I should. No. I stood up, tucking my phone into my pocket. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She orders food without permission, demands we pay for it, then screams at us when there are consequences. When does this end, Sarah? The thundering footsteps down the stairs answered my question. Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway like an avenging angel, face flushed, still clutching her gaming headset. You cannot cancel my credit card. I need that for things. What things? I asked calmly. Food. Gas money when I get my license. Clothes. Those are all things you can ask permission for. Or earn yourself. This is insane. She whirled to face Sarah. Mom, tell him he can't just cut off my money. Sarah looked between us, clearly torn. I could see the old pattern trying to reassert itself, Emma creating chaos until Sarah intervened to smooth things over. But something in my wife's expression was different this time. Emma, Sarah said slowly, you did order food without asking. That's not really appropriate. Emma's jaw dropped. Are you serious right now? You're taking his side. I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm just saying. No, you are. You're letting him control everything just because he pays for stuff. Emma's voice cracked with genuine distress. I can't believe you're letting him do this to me. That's when I realized we'd reached the real heart of the problem. Emma wasn't just addicted to gaming, she was addicted to having no consequences. She'd learned that tears and manipulation could solve any problem, bypass any boundary, erase any mistake. Emma, I said, what happens when you're 18 and living on your own? Who's going to give you money for pizza when you haven't earned it? I'll figure it out. But that's not now. But it could be now. You keep telling me I'm not your parent and can't make you follow rules. Fine. But parents are the people who provide things like credit cards and gaming setups and unlimited internet. If I'm just some guy your mom married, then you get what some random guy owes you, which is nothing. Emma stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're being completely unreasonable. Am I? Let's do some math. I pulled out my phone's calculator. Your gaming setup cost about $3,000. Monthly electricity for your room running 24/7, roughly $60. High-speed internet, $80 a month. Your phone plan, $45. That credit card you just used without permission, averages about $200 a month. So I'm spending roughly $400 every month supporting a lifestyle for someone who treats me with complete disrespect. The numbers hung in the air between us. Emma's face went through several expressions as she processed what I'd said. Those aren't. I mean, you chose to buy those things. I chose to buy them for my stepdaughter who I thought appreciated them. Someone who said thank you occasionally and followed basic household rules. That person seems to have been replaced by someone who thinks I'm just an ATM with no feelings. Sarah was watching this exchange with a strange expression, part horror, part fascination, like she was seeing Emma clearly for the first time in months. I do appreciate things, Emma said, but her voice lacked conviction. When's the last time you said thank you for anything? When's the last time you ate dinner with us? When's the last time you acknowledged that I might care about your grades or your health or your future? Emma opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she didn't have a ready answer. That's what I thought. The standoff in our kitchen stretched on, Emma's mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find some argument that would reset the game board back to her advantage. But for the first time in months, I wasn't backing down, and Sarah wasn't rushing to smooth things over. That's when Emma played her nuclear card. Fine, she said, voice dropping to a cold whisper. You want to know what I appreciate? I appreciate that my real dad never treated me like this before he died. The words hit me like a physical blow. Sarah gasped audibly. Emma had never, ever weaponized her father's death before. It was the one sacred line we'd all agreed never to cross. Emma. Sarah's voice cracked with shock. But Emma wasn't done. He would have understood that gaming helps me cope with losing him. He wouldn't have tried to control every single thing I do because he's insecure about not being my actual father. I felt something fundamental shift inside my chest. Not anger, something colder and more permanent. Emma had just burned the last bridge between us, and we all knew it. You're absolutely right, I said quietly. Your father wouldn't have done any of this. Because your father isn't here. I am. And I'm done pretending that caring about your future makes me the villain. Emma's triumphant expression faltered as she realized her bomb hadn't detonated the way she'd expected. What's that supposed to mean? I walked to the junk drawer and pulled out a notepad, my hand surprisingly steady. It means you just made this very simple for me. David, Sarah warned, don't say anything you can't take back. But I was already writing. Here's how this works now, Emma. You have two choices. Choice 1, you follow the house rules we established together, reasonable gaming hours, homework first, family dinners twice a week, and basic respect for the people who care about you. Emma crossed her arms. And if I choose that? Then you keep all your privileges. Gaming setup, high-speed internet, phone plan, the credit card for approved expenses. Plus, we work together on getting your grades back up and maybe figure out some balance in your life. That's basically what we agreed to yesterday before you freaked out about the homework thing. Except yesterday you lied to my face, cheated on your assignment, and bragged about manipulating me. So now there's actual accountability. Emma's eyes narrowed. What's choice 2? Choice 2 is you continue treating me like I'm irrelevant. In which case, you get to find out what irrelevant actually means. I kept writing as I talked. No gaming setup, you can use the family computer in the living room for homework only. Basic internet access for school needs. A flip phone instead of smartphone. No credit card, no spending money unless it's for absolute necessities that Sarah and I approved together. You can't do that. I can do exactly that. Because all of those things cost money that I earn at a job I go to every day to support this family. Including you. Sarah was staring at the notepad like I was writing Emma's death warrant. David, taking away her phone. That's her connection to her friends. Her friends will survive. People managed to have relationships before smartphones existed. Emma looked to her mother desperately. Mom, you can't let him do this. This is abuse. It's not abuse, Emma. It's what happens when you tell someone they're not your parent while expecting them to fund your lifestyle. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Henderson, this is Jake, Emma's friend. She told us you're threatening to take away all her stuff. That's really messed up. I showed the screen to both of them. And here we go again. Emma, did you text your friends during this conversation? She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I was just. You were manipulating the situation. Again. I typed back to Jake, Emma has some choices to make about following basic household rules. Her privileges depend on her choices. Emma lunged for my phone. Don't text my friends. Your friends are getting one side of a very complicated story. Maybe they should hear what you actually said to me tonight. I didn't say anything that bad. You used your dead father as a weapon to try to hurt me because I asked you to be accountable for your actions. The kitchen went dead silent. Even Emma seemed to realize she'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. So, I continued, folding the notepad and setting it on the counter between us. You have until tomorrow night to decide which version of your life you want. Choice 1 means we try to rebuild some kind of family relationship. Choice 2 means you get to find out how independent you really are. Emma stared at the paper like it might catch fire. This is insane. This is consequences, Emma. Welcome to the real world. The next 24 hours felt like living in a war zone during a ceasefire, everyone armed and waiting, but nobody firing yet. Emma retreated to her room after our kitchen confrontation, but instead of her usual gaming marathon, I heard phone calls. Lots of them. Hushed, urgent conversations that lasted well into the night. She was building her case, rallying her troops, preparing for whatever final assault she thought would break me. Sarah barely spoke to me. She moved around the house like she was walking through a minefield, shooting me worried glances but never quite ready to voice whatever was eating at her. I knew she was torn between supporting me and protecting Emma, but her silence felt like abandonment when I needed backup the most. Work was impossible. Every hour that ticked by brought me closer to the deadline I'd set, and I kept second-guessing myself. Was I being reasonable or was I becoming the controlling stepfather everyone would blame when this family imploded? My hands shook slightly as I typed emails, and I found myself staring at my phone, waiting for the next crisis. It came at 2:47 p.m. Mr. Henderson. The voice was crisp, professional, unfamiliar. This is Patricia Wells from Child Protective Services. We've received a report about the welfare of a minor in your home. I'd like to schedule a visit to discuss the situation. My blood turned to ice water. I'm sorry, what? We have concerns about potential emotional abuse and neglect of Emma Martinez. The report indicates you've been withholding basic necessities and creating an unsafe living environment. Emma. That brilliant, calculating, ruthless kid had called CPS on me. There's been a misunderstanding, I managed. I've been trying to set appropriate boundaries around Emma's gaming habits and academic responsibilities. I'm sure we can sort this out quickly. Would tomorrow afternoon work for a home visit? After I hung up, I sat in my car in the work parking lot, hands trembling with a mixture of rage and fear. Emma had gone nuclear. She'd actually called the state on me for trying to parent her. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Just so you know, Emma's really scared about what you might do to her tonight. A lot of people are watching this situation now. Then another, we have screenshots of your threats. This has gone too far. Emma had mobilized her entire network, friends, their parents, probably half her school. I was being painted as an abusive stepfather by a kid who'd never faced a real consequence in her life. I called Sarah immediately. They called you too? She answered without preamble. CPS. Yes. Sarah, what the hell has Emma told people? I don't know. My sister just called me, crying, asking if you've been hurting Emma. My own sister, David. She wanted to know if Emma could come stay with them. The magnitude of Emma's scorched earth strategy was becoming clear. She wasn't just fighting me anymore, she was systematically destroying my reputation and relationships to avoid changing her lifestyle. We need to get ahead of this, I said. I'm coming home early. David, maybe we should just give her back the privileges. Before this gets any worse. There it was. Sarah was ready to surrender completely rather than weather the storm Emma had unleashed. If we cave now, she learns that calling CPS gets her whatever she wants. What happens the next time we try to discipline her? Or the time after that? I don't know. But I can't handle CPS investigations and family members thinking you're abusive and... Sarah's voice cracked. Maybe Emma's right. Maybe this has gone too far. I sat in my car, watching normal people walk by living their normal lives, and realized that Emma had already won. She'd made the cost of holding boundaries so high that even my own wife was begging me to surrender. But tomorrow, CPS would walk through my house and see the truth, a spoiled teenager who'd weaponized the system against a stepfather who dared to care about her future. The question was, would anyone believe me? The CPS visit was scheduled for 4 p.m. the next day, which gave Emma exactly 22 hours to stage the perfect crime scene. And she used every minute of it. When I got home from work early, I found her in the living room with Sarah, tissue strategically placed on the coffee table, looking like a trauma victim giving testimony. They both went silent when I walked in. Don't stop on my account, I said, hanging up my keys. I'm sure this is fascinating. Emma's eyes were red-rimmed, her voice barely above a whisper when she spoke. Mom, I'm just scared about what might happen tomorrow. What if they don't believe me? The performance was flawless. If I hadn't lived through the past few days, I might have believed it myself. Emma, I said carefully, what exactly did you tell CPS? She looked at me with perfect victim eyes. I told them the truth. That you've been punishing me for things I can't control and making me feel unsafe in my own home. Things you can't control. My gaming helps me cope with Dad's death. But you keep taking away the only thing that makes me feel better. Sarah's expression softened, and I watched my wife fall right back into Emma's trap. The dead father card, deployed with surgical precision. And the unsafe part. I pressed. You've been getting angrier and angrier. Yesterday you were making these lists about taking away my phone and... Her voice trembled perfectly. I don't know what you might do next. It was brilliant. Emma had taken every reasonable consequence I proposed and reframed it as escalating abuse. She turned my attempt at accountability into evidence of instability. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Emma asked us to check on her tomorrow during the CPS visit. We'll be watching. Then another, just want you to know that if anything happens to Emma, a lot of people have screenshots of your threats. Emma, did you give people our address? I wanted people to know where I was in case. She trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. In case of what, exactly? Sarah stood up abruptly. David, stop. You're proving her point right now. I stared at my wife. I'm proving her point by asking questions. You're intimidating her. Look at her. I looked. Emma was the picture of a frightened child, small, vulnerable, shrinking away from my presence. It was the same face she'd made when trying to get out of soccer practice. The same expression she'd used to avoid cleaning her room. The same manipulation she'd perfected over 16 years of getting her way. But Sarah saw what Emma wanted her to see. Maybe you should stay somewhere else tonight, Sarah said quietly. Just until after the visit tomorrow. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. You want me to leave my own house? Just temporarily. To give everyone some space. Sarah, if I leave tonight, what story does that tell CPS when they get here tomorrow? What does it look like when the man of the house is suddenly missing? Emma's eyes flickered with something that might have been disappointment. She hadn't thought of that angle. I'll stay at Jake's tonight, I said finally. But I'll be back tomorrow before CPS arrives. And Emma? When this investigation turns up nothing, we're going to have a very different conversation about consequences. For just a moment, Emma's mask slipped. I saw the calculating teenager underneath the victim performance. What if they find something? She asked quietly. Like what, Emma? Like evidence that you've been emotionally abusing me? And there it was. Emma hadn't just called CPS reactively, she'd been documenting things. Building a case. My stepdaughter had been playing chess while I'd been playing checkers. The question was, what kind of evidence could a 16-year-old possibly manufacture in 24 hours? I didn't sleep at Jake's that night. Instead, I sat in his kitchen until 3 a.m., drinking coffee and trying to figure out what Emma might have documented as evidence against me. Jake, bless him, let me pace and rant without judgment, occasionally offering insights from his own stepfather experience. Kids that age, they're smarter than we give them credit for, he said around midnight. My stepson tried to record me yelling at him once. Turns out he'd been deliberately provoking me for 20 minutes, then started recording right when I finally raised my voice. That's when it hit me. Recording. What? Emma's been on her phone constantly during our confrontations. I thought she was texting friends, but I pulled out my own phone and started scrolling through our recent arguments. She could have audio recordings of me taking away privileges, setting boundaries, explaining consequences. All without the context of what led up to it. Jake whistled low. That's actually pretty sophisticated. She's had 3 years to study how I react to things. She knows exactly how to push my buttons, and if she's been recording the results. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Emma found some old bruises on her arms. Says she doesn't remember how she got them. David, please tell me you never. I stared at the message, my blood running cold. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. What now? I showed Jake the text. Mysterious bruises. Just appeared overnight. Could be from normal teenage clumsiness, Jake offered hopefully. Or she made them herself. Emma's been doing competitive gymnastics since she was 8. She knows exactly how to create convincing injuries. My phone rang. Sarah, her voice shaking. David, I'm looking at these bruises and they look like finger marks. On her upper arms. Sarah, think about this logically. When have I ever grabbed Emma? When have I ever even touched her during an argument? I don't know. I wasn't there for every interaction. Yes, you were. Every single confrontation happened when you were home. Emma made sure of that because she knew you'd intervene if things got too heated. Silence on the other end. Then, she says there were other times. When I was at work. What other times? I work the same hours you do. When would I have been alone with Emma long enough to hurt her? But even as I said it, I realized how it would sound to CPS. Stepfather denies everything. Wife uncertain about timeline. Teenager with physical evidence and audio recordings. It was Emma's word against mine, and she'd stacked the deck perfectly. Sarah, I need you to think very carefully. Has Emma ever hurt herself before? When she was trying to get out of soccer, what happened? A long pause. She said she had chronic ankle pain. But the doctor couldn't find anything wrong. And when she didn't want to go to summer camp? Stomach issues. But Sarah's voice trailed off. But the medical tests showed nothing. Emma has a history of manufacturing physical problems to avoid things she doesn't want to do. This is different, David. These are actual bruises. Bruises she could have given herself with a hairbrush handle. Or by pressing hard on her arms for extended periods. There are dozens of ways to create convincing bruises if you know what you're doing. I could hear Sarah breathing heavily on the other end. Why would she go that far? Because yesterday I gave her a choice between changing her behavior or losing her privileges. And Emma would rather destroy our family than accept consequences. When Sarah finally spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. What if you're wrong? What if something did happen and I didn't protect her? That's when I realized Emma had already won. She'd planted enough doubt that even Sarah, who'd been present for every argument, who'd seen Emma's manipulative patterns for years, was starting to believe the manufactured evidence. Tomorrow, CPS would see those bruises and hear those recordings. They'd meet a tearful teenager and a confused mother. And I'd be the angry stepfather trying to explain it all away. The CPS worker, Ms. Wells, arrived at exactly 4 p.m. with a briefcase and a kind of neutral expression that revealed nothing. Emma had positioned herself perfectly, sitting on the couch in an oversized sweater that made her look younger, those mysterious bruises carefully displayed on her forearms. Mr. Henderson, Ms. Wells nodded to me, then turned to Emma with a gentler tone. And you must be Emma. I'd like to speak with you first, if that's okay. What followed was 45 minutes of muffled conversation behind closed doors while Sarah and I sat in our kitchen, avoiding each other's eyes. I could hear Emma's voice occasionally, tearful, hesitant, painting her picture of life with an unstable stepfather. When they emerged, Ms. Wells looked troubled. Mr. Henderson, I'd like to hear your perspective on the household dynamics here. I explained everything, the gaming addiction, the failing grades, Emma's escalating defiance, my attempts at reasonable consequences. Ms. Wells took notes but her expression remained skeptical. Emma mentioned you've been increasingly angry and controlling. She has some recordings she'd like to share. My heart sank as Emma pulled out her phone. But as the first recording played, something unexpected happened. It was me, all right, but the audio was longer than Emma had intended. Emma, you need to start doing homework before gaming, my voice came through clearly. Then Emma's response, you're not my real dad and you can't make me stop gaming. Then my calm reply, fine. We'll see about that. Ms. Wells paused the recording. Emma, you told me he screamed at you in this interaction. Emma's face flushed. The screaming was after I stopped recording. I see. Can you play the next one? The second recording was even more damaging to Emma's case. It captured her deliberately provoking me, then my measured responses about consequences. By the third recording, which included Emma's cruel comments about her dead father, Ms. Wells was looking at my stepdaughter with new eyes. Emma, these recordings don't match the story you told me. That's when Emma made her fatal mistake. Cornered and desperate, she doubled down. He probably deleted the bad parts. He's good with technology. Emma, Ms. Wells said quietly, that's not how phone recordings work. I watched my stepdaughter's entire strategy crumble in real time. The recordings she thought would condemn me had actually proven my restraint. Her claims of screaming and threats were contradicted by her own evidence. What about the bruises? Emma asked desperately, rolling up her sleeves. Ms. Wells examined the marks carefully. Emma, I've seen a lot of different types of injuries in my work. Can you tell me exactly when these occurred? It was during one of our fights. Which fight specifically? Because according to these recordings, your stepfather maintained significant physical distance during your confrontations. The house went silent except for the ticking of our kitchen clock. I think I need to speak with you and your mother privately, Emma. Whatever happened in that conversation, Emma emerged 20 minutes later looking smaller somehow. Defeated. Ms. Wells closed her briefcase with a decisive snap. Mr. Henderson, I find no evidence of abuse or neglect in this home. However, I am recommending family counseling to address the communication issues I've observed. After she left, the three of us stood in our living room, the weight of everything hanging between us. Emma spoke first, her voice barely audible. I'm sorry. For which part? I asked quietly. All of it. The lies, the recordings, the... She gestured at her arms where the self-inflicted bruises were already fading. I just wanted everything to go back to how it was before. Before consequences existed. Emma nodded miserably. I know how pathetic that sounds now. Sarah finally broke her silence. Emma, what you did today could have destroyed David's life. Do you understand that? Watching Emma finally face the magnitude of her actions was both heartbreaking and necessary. The manipulative teenager was gone, replaced by a scared kid who nearly imploded her own family to avoid growing up. So what happens now? Emma asked. I looked at my stepdaughter, really looked at her for the first time in months. Underneath all the manipulation and defiance, she was still the kid who used to help me make pancakes. Now we rebuild. But this time, we do it with honesty.